Ever wonder who the original bad boy of English literature was? Well, today we're diving into the world of a writer who broke every single rule, like 400 years ago. This guy was a satirist, a total troublemaker, and he created one of literature's very first and greatest anti-heroes.
And to really get this guy, you've got to meet his most famous creation first. Now forget any ideas about a knight in shining armor. This is Jack Wilton. And Jack, well, he's a character who survives not on honor, but on his wits in a world that is just brutal, corrupt, and dangerously unpredictable.
And the book that tells his story, it's called The Unfortunate Traveler. Now, when this thing dropped in 1594, it wasn't just a book, it was like a literary hand grenade. It's a brutal, darkly hilarious, and really cynical adventure that just completely changed the game for what a novel could even be.
So, what was the big deal? What made this book such a masterpiece and so unfortunate? Well, for starters, it introduced a whole new type of story to English readers.
Yeah, Nashe was one of the very first writers to bring this style, which was actually inspired by Spanish novels, over to England. It's called a picaresque novel. The star of the show is the picaro, basically a rogue. And you can just forget about a clear moral compass. The only goal here is survival. And the journey? Well, the journey is everything.
So instead of a nice, clean, orderly plot, this novel just kind of lurches from one insane event to the next. It smashes together real history with totally wild fiction, mixes shocking, grotesque violence with this super dark, cynical humor, and the whole thing feels completely chaotic. It's a structure that perfectly mirrored the crazy, unpredictable feeling of the time. It felt dangerous, and it felt real.
Right, and at the center of all this chaos, that's where we meet this brand new kind of protagonist. Seriously, this was someone English readers had never really seen before.
So, who is this Jack Wilton guy? Well, for one, he's cunning and totally unscrupulous. He's not noble, he's not virtuous, and he is definitely not a hero. He's a morally gray survivor who lies, cheats, and deceives his way through a completely corrupt world. But here's the thing, he's our narrator, and because of that, you just can't help but get sucked in by his charisma and his sheer will to live.
And that, right there, that's his legacy. I mean, think about it. Without an anti-hero like Jack Wilton paving a way, would we have characters like Tony Soprano or Walter White or even Fleabag? The whole idea of a flawed, morally questionable protagonist that we somehow end up rooting for, that's become a cornerstone of modern storytelling. Nashe was just way, way ahead of his time.
Okay, but Nashe wasn't just writing all this stuff for shock value. Nope. All that chaos and all that violence, it all had a very sharp point. He was taking a dark mirror and holding it right up to the hypocrisy of the world around him.
Take war, for example. He took that romantic, glorious myth of war, heroic knights and honorable combat, and he just completely tore it to shreds. In his world, war isn't some noble quest. It's a chaotic, destructive, senseless business, fueled by greed and filled with nothing but suffering. For his time, that was an absolutely radical thing to say.
And he didn't stop there. He also played this fascinating game with the idea of reality itself. He would just drop his fictional rogue, Jack, right into the middle of real historical events, hanging out with famous people like King Henry VIII. And by doing that, he was making this really clever, subtle point. He was asking, hey, maybe what we call official history is just another story, one that can be twisted and manipulated just like any other.
So who was this guy? Who was the brilliant, incredibly bold mind behind all this mayhem?
Let's meet the man himself, Thomas Nashe. Now, he was a university-educated guy, a real wordsmith with a mastery of language. But instead of chilling in some ivory tower, he dove headfirst into the messy, vibrant, and pretty vicious literary brawls of London. He was known for this incredible style that mixed high-minded poetic language with the raw, rough slang you'd hear on the street.
And as you can probably guess, a writer this provocative did not have a quiet, peaceful career. His life was every bit as turbulent and innovative as his writing.
You see, Nashe was a key player in what we now call the pamphlet wars. This was basically the Elizabethan equivalent of a vicious social media feud or a diss track battle. He would get into these savage public fights, publishing pamphlets just to trade these incredibly witty and often poisonous insults with his rivals, and his prose was his weapon.
So yeah, his career was pretty short, but it was absolutely explosive. Just look at this timeline. In 1592, he drops Pierce Penniless, a satire on greed that becomes a huge bestseller. 2 years later, he releases The Unfortunate Traveler, basically pioneering a new type of novel in England.
By 96, he's deep in a feud writing this vicious attack pamphlet. And then, in 1597, he co-writes a play, The Isle of Dogs, that is so rebellious and so seditious, the authorities ban it and issue a warrant for his arrest. The guy literally had to flee London to stay out of jail.
So that brings us to the big question. When you look at our world today, our fascination with antiheroes, our constant social media takedowns, the way we use satire to question authority, you have to wonder, was Thomas Nashe just 400 years ahead of his time? It really seems like it. He wasn't just writing for his time. In a lot of ways, he was writing for ours. And his work is this powerful reminder that truly great writing doesn't just entertain, it challenges, it provokes, and it holds a mirror up to the world, no matter how unflattering that reflection might be.